Hi, I'm Ria. I'm Curriculum Coordinator of PSHCE and Head of RE/RS at Northwood School in Hillingdon. And today I'm going to be sharing how we build consistency and quality across PSHCE in the whole school. So in terms of outcomes of this session, I hope to give some practical strategies in order to build consistency and quality across whole school PSHCE. Specifically through approaches to boosting consistency in delivery, practical ways to increase quality of delivery across teams, and practical tools to track curriculum pace and progress. So a little bit of context, PSHCE at Northwood is taught weekly for a 1 hour long lesson to all students in Year 7 through to Year 13. In Year 11, they have received PSHCE content in autumn term only, and Year 12 and 13 have a slightly different structure to their curriculum than the rest of the school because of other demands like UCAS and apprenticeships. So it's taught weekly in form groups by form tutors, and this means that it's teachers with other specialisms or non-specialist PSHCE staff. But what I would say is that this means that our staff actually have a really strong relationship with the students they teach PSHCE to, as they are their form tutor and they see them daily, and ideally travel up the school with them. And our curriculum is modelled around a spiral curriculum in which core concepts are returned to every single year for Year 7 to Year 10. And this is roughly through themes where autumn term is citizenship education, spring term is health and well-being, and the summer term is a relationship, sex and health education. So firstly, in terms of trying to boost consistency across whole school delivery, the first way we do this is through centralised lessons. Now, these are planned either by myself or a very small team who historically has worked on PSHCE. And this means there's lots of consistency across the school in terms of across every single form group using the same set of slides, but also in terms of from unit to unit or returning to those themes that I mentioned year on year. And we use high quality resources in order to plan these sessions. So we have a PSHCE associated membership, which is absolutely invaluable. We use resources from NSPCC as well as Brook and NHS, etc. And this means that form tutors do not have to plan individual lessons. They have a staff access folder where they all can go into the folder that you can see at the bottom and just go to the year group they are teaching, that their form group is, and click through the lessons there. Another way that we try to boost delivery across form teams is instructions to staff on either the first slide of the PowerPoint, in the notes sections, or even in the task itself. So from this one, you can see from a Year 10 scheme of work talking about mental health and well-being. You can see the title is Silent Written Class Task for 4 minutes, and actually that shows the noise level expected, what is expected, students are going to write that paragraph, and the time allowed. Whereas in the bottom left hand corner you can see that it's only the definition of resilience in the student's own words that needs to be written down. Likewise, in the Year 7 scheme of work, you can see there's really explicit instructions in the slides about think, pair, share for 20 seconds, 1 minute, and then 3 minutes. And then also in terms of the task on the bottom one, using the green pen, amend your additions, your definitions with the additions from the class discussion. And therefore that's explicit instructions to both staff and students. And sometimes it is in the bottom notes section. This might be a bit too small to read on the screen. But this lesson is about introducing the concept of pornography to Year 9 and why things might not be quite accurate of real life in this content. And we explore what we mean by stereotypes, gender norms and sexual norms. Now, these are 3 words that students actually really need to understand in order to understand some of the potential problems that pornography might invoke. So actually exploring what these words mean is quite difficult. So here I've said to scaffold students, but what does norms mean? What does it sound like? Get to normal, and then go, well, what does that actually mean? And then introduce the concept of gender and sexual norms there to build up to those definitions. A final way that we try and boost consistency across staff is for a weekly email sent to all form tutors with instructions on the lesson, any printing required, any particular priorities or issues that I know have come up in the past, or common misconceptions with that topic. And I just put it in little italics underneath the lesson link so that they have the link straight to the lesson, but also some top tips on how to deliver the lesson. You can see that again here. It's also a great way to sort of remind staff to take registers or any sort of RAG statements, for example, that I'll come back to in a minute, in order to deliver that lesson. And that RAG statement is a before the lesson and after a lesson statement that students simply highlight, saying I can do this, or I would feel uncomfortable doing this, in terms of explaining their knowledge or why it's important to, for example, consider what we see online or be careful about what we put online about ourselves. And this also works in order to scaffold consistency across teams as well, because staff can see what the outcome of the lesson needs to be, and that they can therefore make any adaptation to the individual slides or form group and their learners in front of them without deviating from the end goal and the learning outcome, in order to adapt to their form group. And this is where consistency means the same diet and the same learning outcomes, the same priority knowledge. It doesn't mean the exact same delivery in every classroom. And this is also enabled through lessons which have optional tasks. For example, if you have a group that moves quite fast in one year group, it means that everyone keeps the same pace, or either or tasks where form tutors can choose between two different ways of delivering a task based on their form group and their preferences. For example, we have one member of staff who she often uses opinion continuums in order to get discussion from her class, whereas other form groups prefer think pair shares and class discussions sat in their seat. Then moving on to quality and delivery. So obviously the centralised lessons using really high quality resources really enables high quality delivery. Weekly emails also means that there's some kind of consistency or high level instruction going on there. But I also hold mini form tutor briefings to boost staff confidence and quality of delivery before very complex topics. So you can see, for example, here on the Year 9 one, I went through what actually is going to be coming up in the summer term. I said that actually in feedback in the past from students is that sometimes they write down keywords and don't really understand what those means, hence the unpicking of gender and sexual norms that I've shared previously. I then went on to share some quite surprising statistics for some members of staff about the extent to which students are accessing sexualised material online, and then shared some pointers on best practice. I have 5 key best practice top tips that I share with staff all the time, and actually thinking about gender norms here and not assuming that it's boys who are accessing this material, but girls are also accessing this material. Likewise, I do the same with all year groups. So Year 7 one, for example, I ran through where this relationships and health education we're going to be teaching in summer 2 sits in terms of the primary curriculum, and then Year 7, and then what they will go on to do in Year 8 and Year 9, because actually a lot of our Year 7 team tend to be ECTs or IT or newly qualified or returning to teaching, and therefore actually having that wider picture of where this sits is really important. Also narrating to them where this sits in terms of I plan the scheme of work after science have taught Year 7 reproduction, therefore they can use scientific terms and use scientific knowledge to improve the quality of their delivery, because the students will already have that. And I also give them some pointers on how they could maybe learn a bit more, some free resources they can access to improve their quality of lessons. We also look to student voice and learning conversations, as well as booklets in mini curriculum reviews. For example, this is a template from a booklet that I did in January. Also learning walks and what we call temperature checks, which are new this year, where leadership group are really supporting me to improve the quality of delivery across the school, where leadership group and head of years come out once or twice a half term, and we all go on learning walks at the same time to see a whole picture across the school. And that's enabling me to track progress a little bit more in depth. So this is a previous learning walk track that I had where I was giving individual feedback to staff, which was really effective. But actually what's really lovely now, we've got getting a lay of the land across year groups. I've completely made up this one because I didn't want to share individual staff feedback, but we can see then across year groups how the land is laying. We are also therefore then enabling us to take individual staff on learning walks to give them opportunities to see best practice elsewhere. And by knowing the lay of the land across the school, we know where the really strong delivery or where maybe best practice can be shared, which is really great. And the way that works is that at the head of year are just covering 20 minutes of the lesson while I take that member of staff to see some other great practice, because obviously all form tutors are teaching at the same time, so that they never get to see best practice. It's a really lovely way of sharing that. And then finally, to improve pace and progress, obviously the weekly learning walks are really important. I'm out and about every lesson. My ear is on the ground. I can see what needs to be adapted, maybe where things need to be optional tasks need to put in, or where curriculum resources need to be updated. This also gives us flexibility and adaptation if more is needed. If there's a trend across the year group that the whole year group are really struggling with concept, then we can make sure we adapt the curriculum in the next half term or the next week to be able to address that misconception or that issue. I tried to see a whole year group in one go, and that's really helped with learning walks and temperature checks with leadership this half term. This is definitely possible because of the size of our school. It's very easy to get out and about, so one member of staff could see 6 members of form team in 1 hour, and also because of the support that leadership are giving to that. And finally, the curriculum reviews obviously are really helping to boost pace and progress, as well as the RAG statements that staff know where they need to get to by the end of the lesson, and therefore are moving towards that in every minute that goes in that lesson. So I hope that was a few really whistle-stop tour of how we try and boost consistency and quality across whole school PSHE. In the resources section, I'll be putting an exemplar of our RAG statements that students use to assess their learning before and after, a form tutor briefing or training exemplar, and a learning walk templates or tracker. Some suggestions I would say is definitely PSHCE Association and NSPCC, as well as Brooke and the NHS.